My brother totaled my car while I was asleep. My parents had a story ready before the ambulance arrived. They forgot one small thing. The call came at 2:47 inches the morning. I know the exact time because my smartwatch buzzed on my wrist and the notification lit up the ceiling above my bed. I had been asleep for exactly 4 hours after a 12-hour shift in the emergency department. And for a moment, I thought it was my pager, that some crisis at the hospital needed me back. Then I saw the screen. "Mom," I answered before I was fully conscious. "Get dressed," she said. "No, hello. No, are you okay? Come to the corner of Weller and 5th. Now. And don't call anyone on the way." I sat up in the dark. "Mom, it's almost 3 in the mommer." "Now, Mara." Her voice had that particular flatness she only used during what she called situations. Not emergencies, situations. The distinction had always terrified me more than the word emergency ever could. I pulled on jeans and a sweatshirt and grabbed my keys from the hook by the door out of habit. They weren't there. I stood in the dark hallway, staring at the empty hook, my brain still half submerged in sleep, trying to understand what I was looking at. Then my stomach dropped. The spare set was still there. My regular keys, the ones with the small blue carabiner Ethan had given me as a joke birthday gift 2 years ago, were gone. Outside, the October air hit me like a wet towel. I called a rideshare because my car was apparently not where I had parked it, and the whole 7-minute ride to Weller and 5th, I kept telling myself there was a reasonable explanation. Ethan had probably needed to make a quick run somewhere. Ethan was probably fine. There was probably nothing to worry about. The intersection looked like a movie set. 2 police cruisers angled across the road, their lights washing everything in alternating red and blue. A silver sedan with a caved-in front quarter panel sat diagonally in the crosswalk, its hazard lights clicking in the dark. And there, embedded halfway into a chain-link fence bordering a vacant lot, was my car, my white Honda Civic, the one I had made the final payment on 8 months ago. The front bumper was gone. The hood had crumpled upward like a folded piece of paper. My mother was standing at the edge of the police tape in her cashmere coat, arms crossed over her chest. She spotted me before I spotted my father, who was 20 feet away, speaking in low tones to a police officer with the practiced ease of someone who did this regularly. He didn't do this regularly. He was a real estate developer from Scottsdale who played golf on Saturdays and donated to 3 different charities because of the tax implications. But he had a way with authority that I had always found nauseating and effective in equal measure. Ethan was sitting in the back seat of one of the police cruisers. Not handcuffed, just sitting. When he saw me through the window, he looked away. My mother took my arm and steered me sideways, away from the officers, toward the shadow between 2 parked cars. "Listen to me carefully," she said. Her grip on my arm was precise, fingers pressing into the exact spot that would leave a mark. "Ethan borrowed your car tonight. He does it sometimes when his Tesla is charging, you know that." I did know that. I also knew I had told him repeatedly to ask first, and repeatedly he had not. "He was coming back from Marcus's place," she continued, "and the light was yellow and he misjudged it, and he clipped that other car." She glanced toward the silver sedan. "The driver is fine. It's a fender situation." "But Ethan, a fender situation?" I looked at my car against the fence. "Mara." She squeezed harder. "Ethan's funding round closes in 3 weeks. 3 weeks. He has 11 investors sitting at the table right now, and a single reckless driving charge in this city, with how fast news travels in the startup community, will end it. He will lose everything. 4 years of work. Everything. He took my car without asking and hit someone. The other driver is fine. She was checked out and released. It's property damage and a traffic violation. Then he can deal with a traffic violation." "He can't, Mara." Her voice didn't rise. That was the thing about my mother. She never raised her voice when she was being truly cruel. She reserved volume for small frustrations, broken dishes, spilled wine. The real damage was always delivered quietly. "You know what his investors will do. You know this world. You've seen it happen to other people. One story on the wrong blog, one screenshot, and those men pull out and Ethan's company is dead." She paused. "You're a nurse. Your record won't affect your license for a first offense traffic charge. You have job security. You have stability." Ethan is standing on a wire right now, and one gust of wind. You want me to tell the police I was driving?" She looked at me with an expression that wasn't quite love and wasn't quite contempt. It sat somewhere in the narrow space between the two, which was where most of her expressions for me lived. "You are our daughter," she said. "We need you to be a family right now." My father appeared at my shoulder as if he had been summoned. He was wearing a jacket over his pajama shirt, which was the closest thing to disheveled I had ever seen him, and it made him look more dangerous somehow, not less. He was holding a gray zip-up hoodie. "Ethan's." "Put this on," he said. I stared at it. "Why?" One of the witnesses described the driver as wearing a gray hoodie. Ethan was wearing this when he got out of the car. He said it the way he said everything, not asking. Briefing. "You put this on, you walk over to Officer Reyes, and you tell him you were driving. You were coming home from work, you misjudged the light. You're sorry. It's done in 20 minutes. I took a step back. "I'm not doing this." "Your apartment lease," my father said. "Not missing a beat is in my name. I co-signed when you were 24 and couldn't qualify a loan, and I have never once brought that up. I'm bringing it up now. I can have you in default by the end of next week on a technicality that my lawyer will find because my lawyer is very good at finding things." He held out the hoodie. "Or, you can put this on and we go home." I thought about my apartment. I thought about the 3 houseplants on my windowsill, and the good coffee maker I had saved up for, and the particular quality of silence I had built into my life after years of living under their roof. I thought about my isn't in the back of that cruiser, looking at the floor, 27 years old and still running from everything he broke. I took the hoodie. The conversation with Officer Reyes took 11 minutes. I watched myself from somewhere near the ceiling, saying the words my father had given me. "Yellow light. Misjudged. I'm sorry." My voice was steady in a way I did not understand and did not trust. Reyes wrote everything down. He gave me a citation and told me I would receive a summons. He was professional and not unkind, and that made it worse. When I turned back around, Ethan had gotten out of the cruiser. He walked toward me, and for 1 second I thought he was going to say something real. Something that mattered. He stopped a foot away, and he gave me a look I recognized from 1,000 childhood moments. A look that said he knew he had won and was already thinking about something else. "You're the best," he said, and touched my shoulder once, like I was a bellhop he was tipping. The ride home in my parents' car was 34 minutes of silence. My father drove. My mother looked at her phone. I sat in the back and watched the city go dark around me and tried to locate some feeling in my chest, besides the specific hollowness of having been useful. The summons arrived 9 days later. Reckless driving. Failure to maintain lane control. Leaving the scene of an accident with property damage. That last one landed wrong. I hadn't left any scene. I had been in my bed, asleep. My Garmin watch had logged my resting heart rate from midnight to 3:14 a.m. in a house on Oleander Street, and none of that data existed anywhere in the story my family had built. My parents hired a lawyer named Mr. Aldridge, a man who wore pocket squares and never fully explained anything he said, as if you were supposed to feel grateful just for his presence. He called me once. He told me to plead no contest, pay the fine, accept defensive driving classes, and move forward. He said the judge was reasonable and the DA had bigger cases to worry about. He said these things with the confidence of a man who had made this particular speech many times before, for many different members of families who had money and situations. I asked him what happened to the other driver, the woman in the silver sedan. He said she was fine, property damage only. Her car was being repaired. I asked for her name and he told me that wasn't relevant to my case. 3 days before the hearing, I sat at my kitchen table at midnight with a mug of cold coffee and my work tablet open to nothing in particular, and I tried to think clearly about my options. I had a legal aid number saved in my phone from a community outreach event at the hospital. I had a colleague, Dr. Felicia Warren, who I knew had gone through a contentious divorce and mentioned her lawyer once. I had the feeling I had been getting since I was a child. The low-grade vibration behind my sternum that meant my family was treating me like a resource to be allocated and that I had let them again, and that there was a specific kind of anger underneath that feeling that I kept trying to examine without quite touching. And then I thought about my car. My car was at the tow lot on Birch, waiting to be assessed by insurance adjusters. My parents had told me to let Mr. Aldridge handle the insurance claim and not to contact the company directly. I had agreed, because I was still agreeing to things on autopilot. But my car had a dash cam. I had bought it 8 months ago, the same week I made the final loan payment, as a small celebration of ownership. A Garmin dash cam 67W, front-facing, wide-angle, with a feature I had been most interested in the immediate aftermath of a fender bender in a parking garage the previous spring. Automatic incident detection. The moment the camera registered significant G-force, which a collision certainly qualified as, it locked the footage and, if a paired mobile hotspot was available, uploaded a copy to the Garmin Vault cloud server. I had set it up to use my phone's hotspot. My phone had been on my nightstand, connected to my home Wi-Fi while I was sleeping, but Weller and Fifth was half a block from the Meridian, a hotel I sometimes had coffee at before day shifts. The Meridian offered complimentary Wi-Fi to the surrounding sidewalk as a marketing gesture. I had connected to it dozens of times on my walks to and from the hospital garage. I sat very still at my kitchen table. I opened the Garmin Vault app on my tablet. I navigated to my device's event folder. There was a file dated 19 days ago, 2:09 a.m. My hands were not steady when I pressed play. The footage was front-facing, wide, and completely unambiguous. Ethan in the driver's seat, his profile clear under the intersection light. The light going yellow, his eyes dropping to his lap, to his phone, for a fraction of a second that was long enough. The sedan entering the intersection on the cross street. The impact? The airbag deploying? Then Ethan pushing out of the car, leaving the door hanging, and walking quickly to the sidewalk. Then faster, then running. The audio caught everything, including the moment, 6 minutes later, when my father's voice came through the still open driver's window. He was talking to my mother outside. His voice was low, but the camera's microphone was sensitive. "Make sure she wears the hoodie," he said. The witness description is gray hoodie, female. It has to match. "What about her car?" my mother asked. "Aldridge will handle the insurance. It doesn't matter. What matters is Ethan's name stays out of this." I watched it twice. I sat with it for a long time. Then I went to the hospital for my shift, because I was already late, and I spent 12 hours drawing blood and starting IVs and charting and pretending I was fine, which was something I had been trained to do by professionals and by my family in approximately equal measure. That evening, I called the legal aid number. The attorney on the other end was a woman named Rosario Vega, and she spoke the way I imagined a surgeon would if a surgeon were explaining to a patient exactly how they had been cut open. Precise. Thorough. Without judgment, which was the part that almost made me cry. She listened to the full story. She asked 3 clarifying questions. Then she said, "I want you to send me that footage tonight. Do not send it to anyone else yet. Do not tell your parents you have it. Can you do that?" I could do that. What happened next occurred over the following 9 days in a way that felt both very slow and suddenly, which is a thing I have noticed about justice, at least the small version of it I witnessed. It does not arrive in a single dramatic moment, despite what it feels like in the retelling. It arrives in small pieces. A motion filed, a request for digital evidence, a subpoena for surveillance footage from the camera mounted above the door of the dry cleaner on Weller Street, which covered the intersection at the exact angle required. 2 days before the hearing, Rosario called me. "The DA has the dash cam footage, the parking cam footage, and your Garmin health data showing your location and biometrics from midnight to 3 a.m. that night," she said. "They've also pulled your phone's location history, which confirms you were home. The DA is a woman named Patricia Mullen, and she is not happy." A pause. "She's also not happy with Mr. Aldridge, for reasons that are now becoming her problem and his." "What does that mean?" "It means Mr. Aldridge filed paperwork on your behalf that contained several inaccuracies that he was aware were inaccuracies. That's a bar association matter and not yours to carry. But it means you should know that the man your parents hired was not working for you." I had known that. I had known it the way you know things when you are inside a situation your family has constructed, which is a bone-level knowledge you do not let yourself name because naming it makes it real, and real means you have to do something about it. "What happens at the hearing?" I asked. "You walk in," Rosario said, "and then you let me do my job." The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Pale wood paneling, fluorescent lights, the smell of old carpet and industrial cleaner. My parents were in the gallery. Ethan was not. He had a board meeting in San Francisco that apparently could not be rescheduled. My mother had texted me that morning to remind me to wear something professional, as if I had not spent 9 years dressing for environments where the wrong presentation cost lives. I wore the same blazer I wore to hospital board presentations, and I did not respond to the text. Mr. Aldridge was already at the defense table when I arrived with Rosario. He looked at Rosario and then at me, and something moved across his face that was not quite alarm but was close to it. "Who is this?" he asked me. "My attorney," I said. He started to say something else. Rosario put one hand flat on the table between them and said, "You'll want to step back," in a tone that was pleasant and left no room for interpretation. Judge Patricia Hollis entered. She was a compact woman with close-cut silver hair and reading glasses on a chain around her neck, and the particular economy of movement of someone who had been in charge of rooms for a very long time. She settled her glasses onto her nose and read something on her desk. "Case 2024-CR0891, the clerk announced. State of Arizona versus Mara Caulfield." Judge Hollis looked up. "Miss Vega, this is your client?" "Yes, Your Honor. I've reviewed the materials submitted by the DA's office yesterday. I have some questions about how this case arrived in my courtroom." She looked at Aldridge. "Mr. Aldridge, you filed the original plea paperwork on behalf of Miss Caulfield." "That's correct, Your Honor. Were you aware at the time of filing that the DA's office had obtained digital evidence contradicting the account in that paperwork?" A pause. "The filing predated the DA's evidence request, Your Honor. That's not what I asked you." She studied him for a moment over her glasses, then turned to the prosecutor's table. "Miss Mullen, how would you like to proceed?" Patricia Mullen was younger than I had imagined from her voice. Late 30s, dark blazer, a yellow legal pad covered in handwriting. She stood and said, "Your Honor, the state moves to dismiss all charges against Miss Caulfield. Additionally, the state has issued a separate summons for Ethan Caulfield, date of birth March 4th, 1997, for reckless driving, hit and run resulting in property damage, and filing a false police report by proxy." She paused. "We would also like to submit the audio recording captured by the vehicle's dashcam into evidence for the pending separate matter." My father stood up in the gallery. "Objection," he started. "Sir," Judge Hollis said, not raising her voice, "you are not an attorney, and this is not your proceeding. Sit down." He sat down. I had been waiting 29 years to see that happen. "The court will note the digital evidence for the record," the judge said. She looked at me over her glasses for the first time, a direct look, not unkind. "Miss Caulfield, all charges against you are dismissed. You are free to go." She set down her pen. "I would strongly encourage you to speak with an attorney about the civil remedies available to you regarding the coercion documented in the dashcam audio." Rosario touched my arm. "That's our cue." I stood up. My legs were entirely steady, which surprised me, because my heart was going at a rate I would have flagged in any patient I had ever monitored. I picked up my bag. I walked toward the double doors at the back of the courtroom, and as I passed the gallery, I looked at my parents for exactly as long as it took to understand that they were not going to say anything, and then I looked away and kept walking. Outside, the sun was still doing what October sun does in Arizona, which is shine like it has no idea what just happened inside. Rosario stood next to me on the steps and said, "Do you have somewhere to be?" "Work in 4 hours," I said. She nodded. "I'll send you the paperwork summary tonight. I want to talk to you next week about the civil angle." The audio recording documents explicit coercion and financial threat. The insurance fraud element, since your father apparently intended to file a claim under your name, is a separate matter for a different set of attorneys. She paused. "How are you doing?" That question, from a near stranger on courthouse steps, did something to the place behind my sternum that had been vibrating at a low frequency for 19 days. I breathed in slowly. "I'll let you know," I said. 3 things happened in the following weeks that I did not entirely anticipate, and that I will tell in order because the order matters. The first was Ethan's hearing. He appeared before the same judge 2 weeks later. He had hired a separate attorney, not Aldridge, a woman from Phoenix who was very competent and who entered a plea of no contest on his behalf. He received a reckless driving citation, a fine of $4,000, mandatory community service, and a 6-month suspension of his license. His record was not expunged because the DA had pushed for the hit-and-run charge to stick, and it did. It would remain on his record for 7 years. His series around fell through 11 days after his name appeared in the court filing, which was public record, and which one of his investors apparently found in the course of routine due diligence. He called me twice. I did not answer. I am not proud of this, and I am not ashamed of it. I am simply reporting it. The second thing was the apartment. My father filed the technical default he had threatened, through the same real estate lawyer he used for everything. Rosario filed an emergency response within 48 hours, arguing coerced financial threat as documented in the dashcam audio, and the motion was dropped. I began the process of getting my own name on the lease, which required a co-signer I no longer had, and which took 3 months and a great deal of paperwork, and which I am now on the other side of. The third thing was a letter. It arrived by certified mail on a Tuesday, which was my day off. The return address was a law office in Tucson I did not recognize. Inside was a 2-page letter from an attorney named Gerald Holt, who introduced himself as the executor of my maternal grandmother's estate. My grandmother, Frances Odom, had passed away 4 years earlier, and I had been told by my parents that she had left her estate to be distributed through a family trust they managed. I had not questioned this, because the version of me that existed 4 years ago questioned very few things my family told me with authority. Mr. Holt had a different account. My grandmother's will, it turned out, contained a clause that both of my parents had been aware of and had not disclosed to me. The clause stipulated that in the event that either of the two named trustees, my mother and father, was found to have engaged in conduct constituting fraud, coercion, or moral turpitude, the trustee designation would be voided, and the full principal of the estate would transfer directly to the sole remaining eligible beneficiary. The estate was worth approximately $1.2 million. My grandmother had been a practical woman. She had grown up in a household where money was used as a leash, and she had apparently spent considerable time and legal fees ensuring it would not be used that way with her grandchildren. She had named Mr. Holt as executor rather than a family member for exactly this reason, and Mr. Holt, who had been monitoring the matter with the careful attention of a man who had known Frances Odom personally and had respected her enormously, had obtained a copy of the court records the week they became public. I read the letter sitting on my kitchen floor, next to the cabinet where I keep the good pots. I do not know why I was on the floor. I had sat down somewhere along the way and not noticed. My grandmother had left me a note at the end of the letter, handwritten, that Mr. Holt had been instructed to include in this specific correspondence, should it ever need to be sent. It said, "Mara, you always knew right from wrong, even when it cost you. That will serve you well. The rest of this is just money. Use it for something good." I sat on the floor for a while. Then I got up, made coffee, and called Mr. Holt to schedule an appointment. I would like to say there was a definitive moment of closure. A conversation with my brother that resolved something. A phone call from my mother that contained an actual apology rather than a carefully worded expression of regret for how things unfolded, which is what I received 6 weeks later, and which was the emotional equivalent of receiving a form letter from a company whose product injured you. I would like to say I felt the things I was supposed to feel, that the anger gave way to something softer and more useful. What actually happened was slower and less cinematic than that. I went to work. I came home. I watered the 3 plants on the windowsill. I met with Rosario twice, and with Miss Holt 3 times, and with an insurance adjuster who was the first person in this entire ordeal who asked me simply and without agenda what I wanted. What I wanted, it turned out, was a different car. One that was only mine from the beginning. I bought it on a Wednesday, a blue Subaru with good sightlines and a factory dashcam already installed, and I drove it home along a route that did not pass Weller and 5th, because there is a difference between not avoiding something and going looking for it. My phone does not log my parents' calls anymore. That took me longer to do than anything else, because I kept thinking that receiving a call was different from answering it. And then one afternoon at the end of my shift, I understood that for me, in my family, it was not different at all. And I blocked the number, and then I drove home in the new car in the October light and thought about nothing in particular, which is a thing I am learning, slowly, to do. I am not telling you this story because it ends perfectly. I am telling you because for a long time, I believed that accepting what my family asked of me was the same as loving them, and it is not. Those are different things. The difference is the part that matters. The difference is the part my grandmother knew about and built into her will and waited to tell me from across 4 years of silence. He did what he did. They helped him do it. And they forgot that I had been keeping records all along. Not for this reason, not deliberately, but because a woman who works in an emergency room knows that documentation saves lives, and that the smallest, most forgettable detail is usually the one that changes everything.